Hello. Hello, everyone. Hello, Charlotte. Thank you so
Hello.
much for joining me. Um, I haven't, it's like one of those things where I haven't seen you for so long, and now I'm seeing you twice in a matter of days. So,
Yeah. Isn't that the way it always goes though? You're just like buses, aren't I? Just
yeah.
all of a sudden there's like three lots of me.
Love it. So we just need to arrange like one more thing and
One
then
more
we'll
thing.
have
Yeah.
the trifecta. um, so, Charlotte, I think most people who follow me know you, but for the few that don't, would you mind just introducing a little bit, sort of about yourself and who you are?
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm Charlotte Jessup. I run Looking After Your Pennies. I'm on Instagram, TikTok, Facebook, YouTube. I have a website. And I talk largely about personal finance and kind of all the different iterations of that. So everything from budgeting, saving money, to investing and pensions, and basically everything that your average person needs to know. My personal spin is I'm a mum, I've got kids, so I talk about it from a kind of a family centric sort of angle, because that's my personal viewpoint. So I just kind of I put my content out there as though I'm talking to myself, really.
Yeah, I find that always helps because I think a lot of people, I think we sort of touched on this when we did the webinar on Saturday. A lot of people want to identify with people similar to themselves, both sort of looks wise, ethnicity wise, but also like economic situation wise, right? So it's important to pull out like what sets you apart. And I
Yeah.
don't think there's many mums talking about finance. Like there's a few, but not a large amount, is there?
No. I think it's important. I think yeah, there are a few people that are talking about it, but I often find that you often get people from different kind of like I find there's a lot of people that are sort of London based that will talk about finance, and I don't live in London, and I mentioned this when we spoke the other day, but like there was a conversation that came up in like the in a little like finance WhatsApp group thingy, and people were talking about the differences between Monzo and Starling. I'm like, I live in Norfolk. Ain't nobody knows what Monzo or Starling is. Like they're like, who is this? Like, where's my HSBCs and my Lloyds and this sort of thing. So so it's important to, I guess, speak to those audiences as well, and yeah, just kind of like be a representative for those people.
Agreed. So how did you first become interested in financial independence?
Yeah, so I think I guess it's one of those things that we kind of know exists, don't we? Like we know that it's out there. I guess we just never really think about it. It's almost like a subconscious concept. And then one day you kind of like wake up to it and you're like, oh, I know this is what, financial independence is. So I think I think a lot of us are aware of financial independence in the kind of context of we have a pension and then we get to an age where we stop working and then our pension supports us, but we think of that as something that kind of happens in old age, really, and not so much as a concept that's it's like once you get to this age then you can stop working and you have enough money to live off and do whatever you want with your life, and then I think for me it was a big realization when that was less about age and more about a number like money. It's like how much money have I got? So I think I when I first started looking after your pennies, I was I was very much I was not a new mum. I had like a 2-year-old, but I was on mat leave with my second, so I was still in that sort of like baby, making ends meet sort of financial juggle phase of my life. but I was busy reading books and watching YouTube and blog posts. I was deep in the world of Pinterest and just seeing all these articles, and you start seeing these words, financial independence. You're like, oh, this sounds great. Finance, yay. Independence, yay. Like these are cracking terms. And so it was kind of, as I entered that world, I started looking a little bit more at this as a concept. And it's been I can't pinpoint, I suppose, a day where I was like, oh yeah, that happened, or a thing. I guess, like I say, it was just an awakening, a gradual awakening to this kind of concept. And then I was like, yeah, I want in on that. Like if I can create my life around my own visions and values and goals and hobbies and interests and all of these sorts of things by being financially sensible, but not only financially sensible, but almost like financially aggressive to a certain extent, then I'm going to get on board with that.
Nice. It does tend to be something that people just stumble upon accidentally, doesn't it? I think quite often when I talk to people. So how do you personally sort of define financial independence? Because it means different things to different people, right? So what is sort of your definition of the financial independence you want to achieve?
Yeah, so it's interesting. So you get all these different sort of, like fat, is it independent, like fire and thin fire and all of these sorts of things,
Yeah.
and I like for me, I actually think it's almost like there's kind of like, there will be no definitive moment. I don't think any of us will come to a moment where there's like a magic number. There's always that point where you're like, oh, a little bit longer, and I saw this play out with my parents and their retirement around like, oh, if we just worked another couple of years, then we'd have like this much more, and then we could do this. And so actually, I think my personal sort of view on financial independence is a case of almost, embedding some of the principles of financial independence in my life on the way, so that when I get there, I'm kind of like, 90% retired. Like that's the goal. But so for me, it will be about having money coming into my life either in a way that requires zero effort or requires a small amount of effort, but in an area of my life that I enjoy. So, like, if I'm, I love running my business, I love doing stuff like that. If I can do something, that makes me happy and that subsidizes, my lifestyle, then I'm not going to be upset about that, provided that is offset by having some of the freedoms to do the other things in my life that I enjoy. So, like if I decided that I was going to be like a paddleboarding cage, like I love paddleboarding, and maybe I could do that a few hours a week, or the weekends, but I still would want the flexibility and the freedom to do other things. That said, I do think that there's a kind of a lost middle ground, which is just having a sense of financial stability. Like for me, I've been financially stable and kind of like I've had a sense of financial freedom for a long time, where I know that I have money coming in. I know that if that money disappears, I have other ways of bringing money in, or I'm making money in, various different ways. And I know that by doing that, I have some of the freedoms that I want. So I feel quite secure in my financial situation, which means that I'm not necessarily super high energy on chasing that financial independence. But for me, it's just about having that balance so that I can have the freedoms I want around my time, and the money to do that.
Yeah, and I think someone mentioned to me a while back that in that sort of sense, I've sort of achieved that financial independence recently for myself, because whilst I can't not work, my income predominantly now just comes from things I actually enjoy doing.
Yes.
So I set my own hours, I set my own time. The only thing really that's keeping me from almost saying like, great, I'm pretty much financially independent now, is the loan I had to take out to, well, I didn't have to, like no one put a gun to my head, but the loan I took out to buy the land next to me. But that was like a massive dream of mine, to buy that land. So when this lady just like shocked me and said like, well, you can have it now if you want, I was like, oh my God, I'm not ready for this financially, but like, I don't want her to change her mind. I don't want her to sell it to someone else. Like, I just need to make it happen. So, you know, I have this like minimum threshold that I have to make every month. So I'm not like fully free, fully independent in that sense. But once I pay that off, I think I'll be able to say like, well, yeah, pretty much financially independent, because you've got some dividends and then you've got like just income that you love doing what you're doing to earn
it. I think a huge step forward in that for me was when I started in you know, like running my own business, because actually then I had full control over my, you know, how I made my money, and you know who I worked with to get that money. You know, like if I wanted to record videos in the evening and spend all day, you know, like on a river, then I could do that. And actually, I don't hate. I actually really enjoy like doing this sort of thing. So this doesn't feel like a hardship to me. So you know, like life comes in waves, but you know, this is it's very much, you know, like there's a huge amount of freedom around my finances in knowing that I have ways to financially sustain myself that are actually enjoyable.
Nice. Because you do looking after your pennies full time, don't you?
I did. I've sort of, like I say, you know, life comes in waves, and you know, things roll around. So I was, I did looking after your pennies full time for about 3 years, a bit longer than that. I'm trying to think about when it actually was. Yes, it's about 3 years. It says 3 years, and then I kind of returned to teaching. Because I was sort of looking to move out of the country, and I wanted to get a visa and all of these sorts of things. And actually, I've just sort of found that for the time of life that I'm in at the moment, I'm actually really enjoying being back in teaching. I'm enjoying kind of the social context, because, you know, like being a solopreneur is can be a lonely world. And actually, you know, I'm enjoying having that. And actually, I'm a pretty good teacher, so I'm quite enjoying people telling me that as well.
Yeah, there's something about that, isn't there? I think that's partly why I quite enjoy teaching English now, because when you get those sort of compliments and those messages that tell you like, oh my God, like thanks to learning with you, I've achieved this and I've managed to do this. And I love how that feels. So I totally get how you feel.
There's like, I swear teaching is addictive. Like, you know, I literally had a moment today with some students, and they I had these, you know, like I work with special needs kids, so you know, like finding some of those light bulb moments can be a little bit, you know, further apart than you might get in, you know, in other settings. But I literally had this moment where, you know, some kids that really struggle. I teach maths, really struggle with some concepts, and one of them gave me this perfect answer to this question. And I was like, that's amazing, mate. You know, like you smashed it. And then went to another student, and he did the exact same thing. And I was like, I taught you this. You know, like this feels great. Like I did this. You're smashing it. So, you know, yeah, I think I'm going to struggle leaving it again.
Do you think you will?
Yeah, I think, like I say, you know, like, you know, things change, things adapt, and you know, I think there's some real benefits. You know, we were chatting just before we came online about the kind of some of the complications that I'm like juggling with about being a parent, and having a job and all of these sorts of things. And I'm remembering a time when I worked full time on my business and didn't have to worry about that sort of stuff. So yeah, I think I will go back to it at some point. Probably if not full time, part time, just because because of the freedoms it brings me.
Yeah, it makes total sense. I think nothing beats that. So we touched a bit on sort of running your own business and working in teaching, but do you have any other sort of side hustles on top of that?
Yes, it's interesting. I think I'm a bit of a serial side hustler. I went for a coffee with a mate, a couple of weeks back, and we were sort of chatting about these things. We talked about hobbies, and it's funny, like how many of the things that I considered hobbies, I've also monetized along the way. Like literally everything from little like sewing things that I've sewn on like Etsy, to all sorts of bits and pieces. But as a teacher, I've been teaching for 15 years now, but I think my first kind of side hustle was obviously tutoring. And there's always been a need for that, particularly as a mathematician, a secondary mathematician. Students want help with their GCSEs or 11 plus or SATs, A levels, all of these sorts of things. So certainly in kind of like my early days in the profession, like I'm new to it, like fresh out of uni, I was definitely tutoring, and for a long time I actually this was when I was on maternity leave as well. I was doing tutoring online, and the real benefit of that was I was able to do that kind of like on my own hours, and I was tutoring a lot of English students, but in other countries. So I had one family, and they were kind of like I think their dad had to go to Texas for work or something, and they were just paying me to tutor them over there, and then they spend the rest of the day like running around outside and having the best time. So that's always been one that I've gone to, and regularly people will come and be like, can you help my kids, can you do this? So I that's one that I know is literally always there if ever I need it. Obviously once I kind of entered the world of like blogging and content creation, that kind of opened some additional side hustles for me. So I've done a lot of things in the way of like writing, and I spend quite a lot of time doing like freelance writing on Fiverr. So I would I had a little page, and I actually focus. It's weird because now I almost exclusively talk about money and finance and that sort of thing online. But at the time, I was writing a lot of like eco-friendly stuff. So I had people that were maybe starting up, like an eco shop, or like a new website, and they just wanted some stuff to like flesh it out a little bit, or they'd be like, can you write us a product description for this product? So I made, and particularly during like lockdown and stuff, I think everyone was like working on their side hustles, and I basically made money off everybody starting their own side hustles, because they'd be like, can you write some stuff for me? And I'd be like, yeah, all right. So write about all sorts of things. So that one's been super lucrative for me. And yeah, so I think I've dabbled in all sorts of things. I've done things like match betting, I've done surveys, I have, and I still do to some extent. I love things like user testing, where you test like the kind of like the user experience, like interfaces and stuff on websites and apps. Like I've basically tried them all. I think the only things that I haven't done is anything to do with pets, and that's just because I don't have them. Like I've never done dog walking, but that's because I don't have a dog. Like people be like, "What are you being a weirdo for?" Like, You're into dogs.
You don't need to have your own. You just need to actually like animals and get on with them. Because it was actually
Yeah, I do like animals. I just don't think I've got room to accommodate animals in my life at present.
that makes sense. But no, I quite enjoyed that side hustle back when I was in London, because a lot of people, I think, when you live in a city, either it's that you're working long hours and you need some help, or you're going away and chances are you don't have maybe family to help you in the city. Whereas, where I am in Poland, it's quite a small community, so pet sitting is not that sort of popular. Although they've opened a pet hotel in the city next to me, which is actually often quite full, which is crazy.
Wow.
But I loved it. I loved pet sitting, and I never did just dog walking. Although my neighbor did that, I always did pet sitting. Most often for cats, actually.
Oh, really?
Yeah, because you can't, or you shouldn't really move cats out of their environment. So
I guess,
whereas a dog enjoys new environments, so you can just take him either with you on holiday or to your parents or to your friends. Cat kind of needs someone to visit.
But cats are like that, and you got to admire a cat for being like, "No, I'm moving. You can come to me."
Exactly. So, just in terms of your financial independence journey, have you had any sort of specific challenges or obstacles that you faced that have sort of maybe been a bit difficult to overcome? Well, ones that you're willing to share as well, and sort of how you dealt with those.
So having kids, pandemics, cost of living crisis, all of those sorts of things. So I think it's easy, when you you kind of, you can have this textbook example of what a financial independence journey is, and you can go, I'm going to invest this much, and I'm going to increase my income by this much, and all of that's going to go in here. And like real life isn't like that, certainly not when you've also got like a family, and like I said, that stuff happens in the world. Like, who saw COVID coming? No one. And some people benefited like from that financially, whereas other people really struggled with that. So like my personal challenges have included things like the pandemic was kind of hard. My story is we were traveling for like 7 months, and then COVID hit, and we kind of like crash landed back in the UK because of that. Not literally, but like felt like it. And then we had to sort of figure out jobs and stuff. So actually that really kind of like slowed down a lot of our financial progress towards that, those sorts of things. In other ways, it it accelerated my business and all of that sort of thing. But obviously there's this transition in kind of like, okay, I had a job, and some savings, and I've got neither of those things. So, I've got to work on my business. So you sort of corrode some of that progress a little bit. More recently, I've my husband and I split up. So, now that's kind of like placed a new dynamic. And, I'm sitting here, and I'll be quite honest, I don't really know what happens after this. It's a bit like like I've got all of the tools, and I've got all of these things that I can do. And, on paper, it could be that, I should be fine. But, like I've not been in this situation before, and it is different. And, I like to think of it as literally as a challenge, as a thing that I'm going to have to work through and adjust to. And it might be a minor setback, but realistically this happens to everybody. Not the actual circumstances, but the fact that there are challenges, there are different obstacles that come our way, and we sort of just have to go, oh, you know what, let's see how we deal with this one, you know, and kind of like figure it out from there. You know, nothing sort of just you know, kind of happens in a vacuum. You know, if we could sit there and just go, I'm going to have this job that pays this much money, and you know, and my outgoings are going to stay at this, and that means that I can put £500 a month into, you know, my investments. Just, you know, that's just not life. You know, like your car will break or the boiler goes, or you know, there's always something that kind of comes your way.
You get a massive electricity bill.
Yeah, we were talking about, like, you don't know, and actually, you know, a real you know, a real part, I think, of the financial independence journey that is probably neglected in the finance space is actually your own financial resilience, and that from a kind of a very practical standpoint. In, do you have you know, do you have emergency funds? Do you have the tools, the you know, like the I don't know, the support and the networks and the know-how to you know, weather that, but also the mindset, you know, like the fact that, you know, I'm sitting here going, oh, my divorce is just a mere obstacle in my journey, isn't necessarily how I was feeling 6 months ago. And so, you know, like for me, that's been an emotional kind of yeah, an act of building emotional resilience to get to the point where I can go, oh, you know what, you've been here before, Charlotte. You know, you've been through things that have felt like they're going to derail this progress, but actually you found a way and you figured this out. And you know, we need that financial resilience to actually weather these storms. And you know, you talk about this, Anna. You know, I talk about this, but you know, like stock market fluctuations. Yeah, you know, like emergencies, electricity bills. You know, all of these things are like almost inevitable. You know, like we know that these things are coming our way, so we sort of have to be prepared for them. You don't know quite what they are, but we know that they're coming.
Yeah. And I think it's so important to remember that throughout the journey, because the amount of people panicking that I see when it comes to investing is crazy. Like, even when you repeatedly try to tell people, you know, this is normal, you know, stock markets fluctuates. Like, you have, even if you look at like the huge earners, you will look at the chart and it'll be like up and down, up and down. And yes, it's up as a general, but I think people look at like the zoomed out version and they just see it going up.
Yeah.
Whereas like you zoom in and you go, ooh, it was up 30% and then it dropped maybe 50%, but then it went up 60, and it, like, you know,
I mean, like if you, I mean, like I always draw parallels to, like, you know, health and fitness and this sort of thing. Like, I will go to the gym one day and have the best workout of my life. I think I'm going to walk out of there looking like a gladiator. You know, like I've smashed it. And then they're like, a couple of days later, I go in again. It's the worst workout. You know, like I'm ready to go home after, like, you know, 10 minutes on the treadmill or something. And yeah, I'm just like, you know, oh, you know, like that was a write-off. I go home, have a pizza and a bar of chocolate, and I think, oh, what am I doing with my life? And that's it. That's the thing. But you keep kind of sticking at it, and then eventually you see some of that progress. And then it's the same thing, you know, in the world of finance. Some days it's good, some days it's bad. You just keep on going and trying to do your best.
Yeah. And I think also sometimes maybe people know that, but they know it at a sort of short-term level. So maybe they think, okay, it's down today, it's down this week, it's down this, oh, but then when it gets to, oh, it's down this year,
Yep.
the panic sets in. It's like,
Yep.
oh no, it hasn't recovered. It's been 12 months and it hasn't recovered. And,
Yeah.
you know, unless you're making investments in dodgy companies, risky companies, you know, things like that, ask yourself, you know, why did I invest in this thing?
Yep.
Is that still true? You know,
Yeah.
Is it still true that I think this is a good company with solid financials, that's performing well, is continuing to be popular, and people
Yep.
aren't likely to abandon it anytime soon?
Yep.
Yes. Then maybe I should stick it out. Like,
Yeah.
maybe there's a reason it's down. What is that reason? Let's have a look. But
Yep.
people just think, "Oh, no, I've been in, like, the red for 12 months, sell. I don't wanna lose
Yeah.
any more,
That's
sell."
the crappiest time to sell. Like I get it. I do get that. Like that mentality, and it's very much an emotional one, like as a like my default, like as a human being is kind of actually it's not my default. I've got two basic settings. I'm either highly emotional or I'm extreme logical mathematician, and there doesn't seem to be any kind of middle ground. So I'm either in full on meltdown mode and panicking about life, or I'm like rationally, I understand this, and it can be hard to, and I'm not alone in this. And we all go through this, maybe not to the same extremes as me, but we can all see the rational and the irrational in the situation. We all know that the textbooks are telling us that when it's down, that we just hold out. And like you say, if all of those things hold true, then why not just persevere? We know that if we've done all the things in terms of diversifying our portfolios and managing our risks and making sure that it's aligned with our visions, morals, whatever, and then we should probably stick it out. And then and then that sort of emotional side of you comes in and goes like, what if you lose all your money? And you have to just sort of go, shh, shush.
Yeah, and I think as you spend more time in the stock market, I think that
Yeah.
kind of naturally comes out, because
Yeah.
you see that. And for me, I always sort of say, before I sold quite a lot of my investments, the ones that were performing best were the ones that I'd held on for the longest, and ironically, ones I invested in during the pandemic when everything crashed.
Yeah.
So that wasn't necessarily like an active decision. Like, it wasn't like, oh, everything's down, I should
Yeah.
invest now. It just so happened that
Yeah.
I was learning the ropes just before the pandemic hit,
Yeah.
and I was sort of just making my initial investments throughout that time. And obviously I then saw it go up a lot and then down a lot and everything else, and sort of
Yeah.
went through that roller coaster of emotions.
Yeah,
And
I think we all kind of rode that little thing, didn't we? I did a similar thing. And like I'm gonna be completely honest here, because I know that we hear a lot in this space about investing and keeping it for the long term. But like I have sold and withdrawn my investments to patch up financial, difficulties that are going on in my life. Like divorce is like a prime example of that. I wasn't going to be able to keep those. I was going to have to, like sell some of those. So, you have to, like that is also okay. There are going to be things that kind of like almost force your hand to make a decision in this, that you didn't, yet. Like my intention when I put that money in was to keep it there forever, basically, and that was always the goal. But it's also okay if you want to withdraw that money, or you need to withdraw that money because you've got, X, Y, and Z that is actually more important, in your world at that time. So, like, yeah, we can all sit there and go, like, oh, don't sell, don't, like, take your investments out. Yeah, sometimes you have to, and that's just life, and that none of that stops me investing. Actually, if anything, it makes me more willing to invest because I've kind of know that money is there if I did need it, if something comes up in my life. So selling is also not a scary thing. It doesn't have to be a scary thing, and it also doesn't have to be something that we chastise ourselves for if we get it wrong.
yeah, if you're selling, I think, because like you said, something comes up. So I've done the same. like what you said, you know, I had my house build that went over budget, I bought the land, you know, all these situations where to me, building my house without a mortgage was the most important thing, you know, more important than investments. But I made a point out of only selling the ones that were in profit. You know, I made a point of I'm not going to sell at a loss. Like I just, unless I'm like absolutely desperate, I'm not going to sell at a loss.
Yeah, and I've not sold a single investment at a loss.
Good.
Yeah,
but I think, you know,
I think part of that's just been luck. You know, at the time that I needed to sell those things, actually my investments were doing okay. You know, if I maybe needed to have sold them in March 2020, that might have been a different story.
Yeah, then you think a little bit like, okay. But again, you might be in a situation where, you know, you really, really need that, and that's okay.
Exactly. Yeah.
But I think that's different to panic selling because they're down.
Exactly.
You know,
Exactly.
like, oh no, I'm down 30%. I need to sell because I don't want to lose more. Like
Absolutely.
that's different to a conscious decision of actually this thing's more important in my life right now. My investments are doing okay. I'm going to withdraw that money. And yeah, you're right. It's good to highlight that because I think sometimes we go too hard on the just buy and hold, buy and hold.
Yeah, and I don't think anybody talks about it, do they? That you know, like you know, all of these things are okay. You know, you're not a bad person because you sold some investments so that you could, you know, like say, build a house mortgage free. Like you're still smashing it.
Exactly. Yeah, but I think this is where we need to make sure we keep it real.
Yeah.
So we've got a question. I'm just going to bring it up here. So from Daniel, what % of your take-home pay did you invest each month to get to your FIRE goal? I'm trying to invest 40% of take-home. That is incredible. That is an amazing percentage, Daniel. Like,
it's interesting, isn't it? You know, again, like income in my life has varied. It's not been this steady kind of like upward, you know, linear trajectory of like I'm going to make a little bit more every year and or anything like that. You know, for me, there's been periods of time where I've made a lot of money, and then there's been times when I'm on mat leave and you know I'm sort of going. You know, like so yes, I think you know 40% of take home is huge, and I've had months where I've done that, you know, and I've had whole years where I've been able to do that, you know, month by month. Also, I've had months where I've been like, it's just not happening, you know, at all this month. And again, I've had whole years
0% this month, yeah,
0%. And you know, like as a business owner, that's the way it can be sometimes. You know, and some months I'll be like, oh, I get to put 10 grand in, you know, like amazing. And then next month I'm like, oh my gosh, I put 10 grand in, I maybe should have eaten that a little bit. But you know, with a steady job, if you can budget and you know what you've got coming in, I think, you know, start with a percentage that feels comfortable. You know, and that could be 1%, it could be 2%, you know, it could be like, you know, 10 quid, whatever you like. You know, pick an amount and then look at ways to kind of increase that. And it's not always about kind of like cutting back. I think a lot of us think, you know, well, let's cut back our spending, and then we can save more and we can invest more and do all of these things. Instead, sometimes it can be about, okay, what if I increase the amount of my take-home pay? You know, if I can keep my, you know, spending here, but actually I can take, you know, my income from here to here, well, then that's huge.
Yeah, and that's exactly what Daniel has said as well.
Yeah.
Stayed in the same one bed flat for 5 years whilst salary increase, which is perfect. And similar example to this, one of my ex-boyfriends, this was before I was as financially savvy as I am now. But I was like, wow, this is an awesome, like maybe not decision, but like idea. He sort of, every time he got a pay rise, he just made a direct debit for
Yeah.
that difference straight into his savings. So it wasn't investments at the time, it was
Yeah.
just a savings account. But it was with the idea of like, well, I'm used to living on this much.
Yeah.
I don't really want that lifestyle creep. So
Mhm.
I don't even want to see that money. Like,
Yeah.
okay, I'm getting an extra 200 quid a month, direct debit on payday, straight away, out of there. Like,
Yeah. Yeah.
that was
Yeah,
super good.
and you know, like like that's just a that's a fantastic thing to do, and I think in theory that works. I think, like that what the cost of living crisis has probably taught us is that actually we've seen our expenses rise. And now we, like I'm getting a pay rise now, and it's like, oh, okay, I'm back to where I was. So yeah, no, absolutely. If you can afford to do that, 100%. And this is what I try and do. Like I have, obviously I have, I've said that, I teach basically full time, and most of that money is kind of allocated for, that pays the bills, it puts food on the table, blah blah blah. So this means that then any money that I make from side hustles, from my business, I can just go, I'm going to put all of that over into that pot, because I know that, my income from my job is paying for like this standard of lifestyle, and that includes holidays and doing stuff for our birthdays and going out for meals and getting takeaways and stuff. So all of that is kind of like covered off. So that means that, and this is kind of similar, it's not necessarily a pay rise, it's just the money that I make through my business. But I know that that is earmarked for like something bigger, something better. And I can put that in there. And so, yeah, if, like if my pay goes up a little bit from, in my teaching job, I probably will just go, you know what? We'll have a little bit of a better holiday, or we'll have 2 takeaways this month, like whatever it is. But it is trying to just contain that within a framework that feels comfortable for your financial situation.
Yeah, 100%. So for me, just sort of other viewpoint, I suppose, on this, because I think we hear a lot about percentages and how much percent should I be investing and stuff like that, which if you are in a position to do that, fantastic. Like, especially if you have 40%, like you will reach your FIRE goal like so quickly. But for me, like pretty much throughout my journey, it was never about a percentage. Like I never said to myself, I'm going to invest 20%, 30%, whatever. It was always about budgeting. So I was always I still do to this day. I have a 12-month budget, and I look 12 months ahead, and I think this was much easier when I worked full time because I had a predictable salary, which I now don't because I have my own business. But when I had a stable salary, I just had my monthly budget for 12 months, and then I said, okay, this month is this person's birthday. This month I'm going on holiday. This month I have a wedding. This month is Christmas. So all these little extra expenses in there. And then this is what I'm paying for my bills. My bill is higher in winter months because I pay more for heating. So let's up this and that, and just strategic planning, and then going, okay, how much can I put into investments that month? And being careful not to stray into the let's just see what I have left over at the end of the month, because that's never good. You'll never have anything
There's
left
never
over.
money left over. Like,
yeah. It's more like,
there's never money. Yeah.
Let's plan. These are my bills that I have to pay. These are the additional expenses that I want to make room for. And then it's okay. So hypothetically, say you have 1,000 left over. Then you go, okay, out of that 1,000, this month I'm going to spend 200 because I'm going on holiday for the weekend, and I'm going to put 500 in investments, 200 in my emergency fund, doing it that way. Then I have 100 left over for fun money.
Yes.
And that's your leftover fund, not the other way around.
Yeah, no, 100%. I do that. I mean, I never, I don't think I've ever done a 12-month budget. That's highly organized. But I do kind of, I use sinking funds a lot and kind of do it month by month instead. So I like, whilst I know I've got a pot for birthdays and Christmas that I pay into every month, same amount each month, because I've worked out how much those things are going to cost me for the year, if that makes sense. So I guess I am doing it, but I'm going, like over the next 12 months, Christmas and birthdays is going to cost me X amount of money. Holidays are going to cost me X amount of money. I'll divide that by 12, pay that in every month, and then I just dip into it when it's a birthday or Christmas. That spreads it out nicely for me. And, I love that routine and those kind of like fixed amounts. Yeah. And, that, then I'm literally on my budget, I'll go, I'm putting this much into investments. And like I say, when you have a variable income, so like I say, some months I'll be like, I've got like, $1,000, $2,000, and I can chuck that in there. Like I've invested, $5,000, in one go, in just random months, because I've been like, nah, I've got that money, that can go in there. If I don't put it in there, I'm gonna spend it on crap. So that's where that goes. And that's okay. So yeah, so I think, like I've never been so much driven by percentages, but more about what feels, like a good amount for that particular moment in my life.
Agreed. So slightly different topic question.
Yeah.
But I don't even think there are any alternatives really for mortgages, but you might know better than me. Would you advise to ask for a mortgage to a bank in the UK? Are there any alternatives to banks?
Um,
I'm not sure I would want to ask anyone other than a
yeah,
bank.
it's a bit of a tough one. I mean, I'm not an expert in this, so I'm probably not the best person to ask. Mortgage brokers are the go-to. The other options really are kind of things like, if you've got family members that can, support you in those things. But, I always urge people to fully consider the implications, because there's normally tax implications or something else when you go down those routes. So although they can be, I mean, like I've got a bit of this going on in my family at the moment where they're trying to help someone out, and then it's just getting really, really complicated. So mortgages are there because they work. But I would speak to a mortgage advisor, because they will be able to look for the best products to you. If you go directly to a particular bank, you're limited to just their products and services. And, advisors and brokers and stuff like that, it's, just as this comment we've got here has come through, go to someone independent, because they are, they're not linked. Okay. So you get, yes, sort of like restricted advice where they can only talk about their products because you've gone to like a particular bank. Whereas if you go to an independent one, they can look at whole market services, and they might even have access to deals that you personally can't find.
Yeah, I think basically speaking to a couple mortgage brokers, advisors, doing your own research on search engines, and just comparing, I think probably the wisest decision. So just conscious of time. So I have two more questions for you from me. The first one is, what type of investments have you found most effective in building wealth?
Yeah, so I'm going to give one kind of like super like practical answer, and then one kind of like wishy-washy hippie one. The first one for me has been ETFs. Like literally, look at tracker funds, all of that sort of stuff. Just I ain't got the time. Like I got 2 kids, a job, business. I want to put it in something that spreads out, my spreads out, my risk, gives me a nice diverse portfolio, and I can literally do it in one click, or a few clicks. Oh, I want to invest in that thing, and that's it. So that for me has just proved effective in terms of managing my not only my money and building wealth, but also just managing my time, because I haven't got time to pick like individual things and do that sort of research. So yeah, so that's the super practical one. And then the kind of like the hippie wishy-washy one is investing in myself, and investing in my knowledge, in building building my skill set, building networking, all of these sorts of things, spending the time to build connections with people like you, Anna, like work on my business. All of that has been a huge investment. Even things like doing my degree, doing courses, just educating myself. All of that investment in me has resulted in, monetary gain, in the long run, and been hugely, hugely valuable on this journey.
I like that. And it's really, really true, because the more you invest in sort of your own knowledge, business, network, like you say, the more sort of sound financial decisions you tend to make over the long term. I like it. Very wise, Charlotte. Okay, and my final question to you. If you could give sort of one piece of advice to someone just starting out on their sort of financial independence investing journey, what would it be?
Just give it a go, really. I think you can sit there and you can get your little spreadsheet out and you can crunch the numbers and you can sit there and nitpick about where and what and when. And actually, if you've not started investing, you've not started working towards this, like sticking 5, 10, 50 quid, putting some skin in the game and being like, I'm ready to make a start on this, is going to do so much for your confidence and just feeling like you're on that path. Because even though I have days when I'm like, I just don't feel like I'm making progress on this, knowing that I have still made progress on it makes me feel a little bit smug. So I would just say, if you're new to investing, if you're new to this whole financial independence thing, whatever your strategy is, just get going, put some money down, start, then you can go, I'm on my journey towards making this happen. And that's super powerful and super motivating. And I think we spend so long just procrastinating on that first step. So just do the first thing, but just get that done.
Yeah, and that procrastinating and waiting is so true. And every single person I speak to about this, like no exceptions, I have never heard anyone say, no, I'm glad I started investing when I did. No.
Yeah, no.
Everyone says, I wish I started earlier.
100%, and that's for good reason. We all wish we'd started earlier because we come at it with knowledge. We know that the sooner you start, the better. So, yeah, like, all right, you stick a tenner in, you might, mess it up in the early days, but you're learning. The whole thing is a journey. What's the worst that happened? You lose 10 quid. Like, I've wasted that on like, I spend £12.50 on a glass of wine on Saturday, so I'm not going to be that upset about losing 10 quid in the stock market and learning a lesson on the way.
Yeah. And I think all the new platforms that have come out make this so much easier, don't they? Because that barrier to entry, that sort of high threshold of minimum investments, is just no longer there.
Absolutely.
So there's really no excuse anymore, I think.
Yeah, like everybody like a quid.
Yeah, it's insane.
Yeah.
And even like the platforms that had quite high thresholds are now like reducing them, I think. So I think, like you say, try it out. Don't put big amounts in initially. Play with it, see how you feel.
100%.
And let us know when you're like, oh my God, I wish I'd started this sooner. because we love to hear it. Awesome. Charlotte, we've been talking for almost an hour. This has been my longest Thriving Tuesday so far. But
to be fair, I could have told you that was going to happen. I'm chatty. I'm sorry.
Me too. No, that's I'm glad. It's been a really great chat. Thank you so much for agreeing to come on here. I'm sure we'll see each other soon on your side of things. And thank you so much to everyone who's been with us, who's been watching sort of live, and also if you're joining us later, watching the recording, thank you so much as well. And we'll see you all soon.
Thank you.
Bye everyone. Bye Charlotte.